Mr. Chairman, I'd like to start by showing a brief video clip here.
You know, I was recently criticized for actually doing a tremendous amount of outreach. That's the kind of criticism that I would really welcome. It was very painful for me to read how successful we've been in getting people to comment on our rules. You know?
The tremendous outreach, Administrator McCarthy, is one thing. But when you use this outreach intentionally to generate nearly 1 million positive comments on your Waters of the U.S. rule, and not only using that outreach from activist groups outside the organization, but I have in front of me a newsletter from an EPA manager, and it looks like Region 5, and it says, EPA is planning to use a new social media application called Thunderclap to provide a way for people to show their support for the agency's proposal. So now you're using social media tools to advocate for your agency's proposal. And this Thunderclap program, it's a social media aggregator that includes Facebook and Twitter and a host of other social media tools. And you're using your employees to advocate for your proposals and activating outside activist groups. Then before the Senate EPW committee, you testified that the EPA's Waters of the U.S. rule is justified because nearly 90% of the comments the EPA received favored the proposed rule. So you're hijacking the comment process, then you're using that data to justify your rule before the Senate EPA committee. Or EPW committee. I'd like to ask you, to your knowledge, did EPA engage in a legal analysis to determine whether using Thunderclap in this manner violated the Anti-Lobbying Act prior to engaging in that activity?
There was no question in terms of the agency that we had done and were doing nothing that constituted lobbying. It would be against the Anti-Lobbying Act. And it is well within the boundaries set by the federal government.
Would you answer yes or no? I'm asking you the question, did you get any legal analysis before using Thunderclap and pressuring your employees to use Thunderclap? Look, I've got the newsletter here.
Pressured an employee to use Thunderclap.
If your agency is using a newsletter telling people to sign up for Thunderclap and promote the agency's proposal, would that not be an ethical violation where you're using your employees to advocate for your proposed rule?
Let's dissect this if we could, sir. The question you posed to me was whether or not our use of social media was lobbying. It was not. It was education, it was outreach, it was getting people engaged. It was exactly what everyone tells us to do, and it's part of the
no, this is a different level, because there was an email here from an employee that was very concerned about feeling that kind of pressure, and that employee contacted the regional judicial officer, assistant deputy of ethics official, and there is agreement that this is a national concern, and it says there is agreement that it is a problem.
That's why I wanted to dissect this. The second question you asked was about an employee who took that and actually copied it in and shared it with others in the agency, which was in fact inappropriate, and that person has been counseled.
It was an agency newsletter, was it not?
Not that I am aware of. I don't know what it appeared in, sir, but he's been counseled, and as far as we know, nobody reacted.
It says from the weekly DD news item. I would like to know what the weekly DD news item is and why it's coming from a regional director.
It was a division director who made a mistake. He was counseled, and I don't want you to get confused by EPA's effort to engage people in the work that it's doing and get them active in considering how important clean water is.
So you do realize that your own regional judicial officer, assistant deputy of ethics official, assistant deputy ethics official says that this is a problem. My next question for you is, what are you doing about that problem?
It is the information is as far as I know, he's been counseled to not do that. It should not have happened, but that has nothing to do with the fact that we use social
There's
media.
two major
media
concerns here.
appropriately.
One is a potential violation of law with the Anti-Lobbying Act. That's number. I'm a Navy pilot by trade. I currently serve in the Oklahoma Air National Guard.
Okay.
I fought in the war in Iraq at the beginning. Imagine if President Bush during the war in Iraq said we need our agency, we need our Department of Defense employees to advocate for removing Saddam Hussein. How do you think that would respond? We would feel pressure as employees of the Department of Defense to do that. Now, this is something that your agency has been involved in. So the Anti-Lobbying Act is of concern to me, and we're going to look further into that. I hope we do, Mr. Chairman. And number two, putting pressure on employees to promote the waters of the U.S. rule. Maybe that's not a violation of law, but it's certainly a violation of ethics. I'm out of time, Mr.
Gentleman's
Chairman. I
time
yield
is
back.
expired. Thank you, Mr. Bridenstine.